Welcome to Hobson UMC on YouTube. I am VHD Jr, the lead pastor here at Hobson. And as always, I am delighted that you have tuned in to listen to us as we talk about the message, which will be on Sunday, August the 2nd. It is the ninth Sunday after Pentecost. So we're delighted that you have tuned in. As always, I am here with my son, Trey, and we have a special guest with us tonight in the studio. But most importantly, we're just delighted that you have taken some time out to be with us. We pray that all is well with you and that you are safe. As a way of being able to center us this day, I want to read from you the first 7 verses of Psalm 17, and then I'll close with verse 15. And I'll be using the Common English Bible translation. Listen to what's right, Lord. Pay attention to my cry. Listen closely to my prayer. It's spoken by lips that don't lie. My justice comes from you. Let your eyes see what is right. You have examined my heart, testing me at night. You looked at me, over me closely, but haven't found anything wrong. But my mouth doesn't sin. But these other people's deeds, I've avoided such violent ways by the command from your lips. My steps are set firmly on your path. My feet haven't slipped. I cry out to you because you answer me. So tilt your ears toward me now. Listen to what I am saying. Manifest your faithful love in amazing ways because you are the one who save those who take refuge in you, saving them from their attackers by your strong hand. But me, I will see your face in righteousness. When I awake, I will be filled full by seeing your image. Amen. As is always an important time in our worship experience, and any time we gather here at Hobson, prayer is very important to us, having that opportunity to be in conversation with God, and it is a way that we keep connected with one another. And so tonight, just want to lift up to you, ask you to be in prayer for Bernard Reynolds, who had a procedure today, is doing well, and we're praying that it comes, that the test comes back. We ask that you pray for the father of John Nelson, who is in the hospital, who tested positive for COVID-19, and he's pretty sick, but he's doing well, and so we do ask that you pray. We ask that you, as a congregation, we know how important pets are to many of our members, and I'm going to ask for special prayers for Gail Watson, who had to put her beloved pet to sleep. And we know that because we believe in the power of love, that for all that are loved and that who do love, that there is a place after this place. So we just ask for prayers for comfort. We ask special prayers for our teachers who are Metro teachers. They went back to work on this past Thursday, and we'll be doing a new experience. They'll be teaching virtually for a while as we look at the numbers of people who are being affected by that. We pray for all of those students throughout the state who are going back in the midst of all of these rising numbers that we're dealing with. So we just need to continue to be in prayer. Be in prayer for all of those who are struggling with anxiety around these issues, and for the families who are trying to be safe and trying to maintain or to establish some kind of normalcy in their lives. And we just ask for special prayers for them. Also going to ask for prayers for a person not associated, but many of you Sam White, who was a long-time teacher and coach within the Metro school system. He passed recently, and so we ask that you continue to be. We ask for prayers for his family and for all of the lives that he touched. Continue to lift up and be in prayer for those who have lost loved ones recently within this congregation, for we know that the grieving process is one that takes some time. As a personal privilege, I just want to thank all of you who both reached out and offered birthday wishes to me, and I had a delightful birthday last weekend, and my son cooked one hell of a meal, and we had a good time. So I give thanks for that, and thanks for that opportunity to be able to share. As always, if there are special concerns that are upon your heart, you can always send me a text message, give me a call, hit me up on Facebook, email me, or whatever, because it is a way where we, even though we are practicing distancing, there is no distancing from God in the midst of prayer. So if you have special concerns, I just ask that you please get in contact with me. Amen. Our scripture for this Sunday, it comes from Matthew's Gospel, the 14th chapter. I'll be reading from you the 13th through the 21st verse, and be using the Common English Bible translation. When Jesus heard about John, he withdrew in a boat to a deserted place by himself. When the crowds learned this, they followed him on foot from the cities. When Jesus arrived and saw a large crowd, he had compassion for them and healed those who were sick. That evening, his disciples came and said to him, "This is an isolated place, and it's getting late. Send the crowds away so that they can go into the village and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said to them, "There's no need to send them away. You give them something to eat." And they replied, "We have nothing here except for 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." Jesus said, "Bring them here to me." He ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. He took the 5 loaves of bread and the 2 fish, looked up to heaven, blessed them, and broke the loaves apart and gave them to his disciples. Then the disciples gave them to the crowds. Everyone ate until they were full, and they filled 12 baskets with the leftovers. About 5,000 men, plus the women and children, had eaten. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. As I said earlier, we have a special guest with us tonight. Normally, this is conversation just with Trey and I. And Trey, some people really enjoyed the conversation we had last week.
Oh yeah, in what way?
Well, they just say they like the interaction that you and I have, and
we got to tone it down though.
I know. But the birthday stories.
That was all you.
Some people who did not know. Some people learned some things, so they were. They appreciated that, and I must say, as I said earlier, I'm thankful for all the people who sent me shout outs, and one of the persons who sent me a shout out was our special guest.
Oh, okay. All right. I see where this is going.
And
that's my boy, man.
You talked about him, and so when he didn't. He sent me an invitation about...
Invitation.
Well, I mean, Yeah, I guess invitation. Well, he's,
what did you send him?
Well, he said, look, happy birthday.
Invitation.
Well, no, he said happy birthday.
Okay.
Let's get together this week. So is that not an invitation?
Sure, it is.
Okay,
but so Facebook don't call it invitations.
Well, it wasn't a Facebook.
Oh,
okay.
Jesus.
All right, no, it was on. It was a text message.
There you go. There you go.
He sent me a text message.
There you go. Let's be more specific.
Right. Okay. And I knew. Because the conversation was still in, so I hit him back up, and so I invited. Now I know this was an invitation.
Sure.
I invited him to come tonight and to be with us and to share in this moment.
Sure.
I will. You can give some of the particulars. All I know is that this is we got General West. I think he's a general. If he's not a general, he ought to be a general.
Right.
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
But I'll let you introduce him because you talked about him last week.
It's no introduction when my voice is associated with a podcast. That my homeboy Steve. That's my man. He's the godfather of my son. I'm the godfather of one of his sons. So that goes without saying the importance that Stephen Christopher West has had on my life. He's helped me mature.
My whole government name.
Yeah. He's helped me mature, and he's a person that tells it like it is. He's not going to sugarcoat anything with me. And I think that's one of the things I respect about him the most. He definitely has a spirit that is one that is led by God, and you can tell it when you talk to him. You can tell it when you look at his family and his accomplishments that, coming from where he came from, coming from some of the stuff that he used to do, that where he is now in his life and what he is doing with his life now, you can see that transformation.
And I knew I don't claim to know as much as you know.
No.
But I can certainly witness that, and I knew that his voice would be a voice that would that the listeners would appreciate hearing from tonight, and so that's why I extended him the invitation, old school invitation.
Man, okay. Right.
To come and to be with us. And
so it just so happened that this is the feeding of the masses, or whatever the story.
Yeah.
The many titles that take place with this story.
Right.
Yeah.
This is an important story. It's the only story.
Right.
That appears in all four of the Gospels.
Okay.
They take a little different twist with it, but it appears in all of them, and each has a slightly different emphasis on it, but feeding a whole lot of folk. If you've ever fed a whole lot of folk, then how important.
But you know what? In my experience, and I guess this has to deal with you and mom and grandma, and that I've never known there not to be enough food. I've always been in the mind frame that we throw way too much food. You get something, you eat on it for 2-3 hours, and then it's garbage. It's not really worth the. Oh, let me put it in another container. Let me put it in the refrigerator. Let me save it because you're not going to eat it. So to think about, all of these people show up and all of these people come, and it's like, we got to feed them. We got to feed them. Like, I don't understand, and it's hard for me to process that way of thinking because it's always been more than enough. It's always been.
So even looking at that thought right there, it's always been more than enough because you have planned to be able to feed them because you didn't want to disappoint.
Right.
But it's a different story when it comes about and now you got a large number you have to feed and you don't know if it's enough.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
But Trey, it reminded me of, my mother.
Yeah.
Had a phrase. You know, she used to say, "Well, it's time for me to clean out the refrigerator," you know. And she would call folk and say, you know, "Do you want to, you know, me send, you know, Sonny with a plate?" You know, and they say, yeah, you know, they're going. I'd be looking at like, you done called 6 people. You don't have enough food in there for, you know. And Steve knows was one of them.
Miss Thompson.
Miss Thompson.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And now that was one lady that could eat.
Yes.
She could eat. And I told her, I visited her in the hospital. She's the only person that I ever knew to like hospital food. I mean, because she just loved to eat. But anyway, but you know, somehow or another, you know, Mom go in and you know,
And make it happen.
Make it happen.
Make it happen. Yeah.
But you know, and that's one of the things we tend to people when they preach from this passage or even discuss this passage tend to look at the what they call the miracle and the feeding of the 5,000, which did not include the women, and it certainly did not include all of Bebe's children, you know, who were there, you know, because we know they went out, you know, when they and particularly, and it was probably some children. Because I've seen this in watching both you and you know and Stephen, you know, is that you know, there was probably some kids that were there without mothers, you know, because they said, "Oh no, you ain't gonna leave him. I know, no, you gonna take him with you. Well, I don't know where you going, but you gonna take." But anyway, that's off the subject. Anyway, but you know, a lot of times we want to focus on, but tonight. You know, today I just want us to have, and I got a couple of questions that I want to, you know, kind of present to you two.
What you got?
The first question,
Yeah.
it says that in this passage, mind you, that Jesus had just gotten news that his first cousin, probably the earthly person of whom he most closely identified with and had relationship with, John, who we call John the Baptist, had just been killed. And so he, as a part of his own grieving and mourning process, it says,
Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I thought the beginning of the scripture said John went in a boat and the people followed him to where Jesus was going.
No, it says when Jesus heard about John,
Okay.
he, meaning Jesus.
Okay. I misunderstood.
All right,
I misunderstood because I was like, okay. Anyway, pick it back up.
We started 13. You know, if we'd have read 1 through 12, John is killed because he calls out Herod for what he's doing wrong, and they ultimately behead him. And
Right. Okay.
So Jesus hears this.
Okay.
And
He's mourning his death. That's where you were.
right. He's mourning. He's in the great, and so he just needs to get away.
Okay.
And he then gets in the boat, sails to the other side of the lake,
Right.
and you know, just imagine for us, you know, it's Old Hickory Lake or Percy Priest Lake, and he's just in the boat. He's just going to the other side so he can be away. The people saw him leave, and they walked around the lake and got to the other side and were there when he got there.
Okay. I got it.
And it says that when he got there, he looked at the crowd. And though he was dealing with his own issues,
Right.
he was dealing with his own hurt, his own pain, he looked at the crowd and he had compassion
For them. Right. Okay.
For
And
them.
so the question is based on that.
So the question based on that is, have you ever found yourself in a situation, and for them, compassion wasn't a head kind of thing. You know, they felt that our emotions came out of our gut. I mean,
Right.
we've heard that expression, you know, I felt it in my gut.
Right.
And for them, compassion was a deep internal kind of experience.
Right.
And so I just want to know, if there's ever been a time for you all when you all were confronted with something, and it was more than just feeling sorry, it's more than just being disturbed by it, but it was something that just internally you felt.
It made you feel. I mean,
Just made you feel that it said to you, you had to respond in some kind of way that you just could not. You couldn't walk away.
Gosh, there are so many things for me that that I could speak on. Go ahead, bro.
So, since I'm amongst Sigma men, Brotherhood, Scholarship, and Service, there are times to where we're going to have to put service into our lives. So I can remember one distinct moment when me and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, we were on our way to church, and there was a lady who had hydroplaned and run into the median, and her car was facing the median on the road. My concern was I saw that it was an older black woman.
Right.
And I immediately got concerned that if someone doesn't put a buffer in between her and that lane, if she gets hit, she's going to die.
Yeah.
So I put my car in between them and got out to make sure she was okay until the police got there. And I can remember them pulling up and saying, what happened? Yeah. How did you all wreck? And I had to tell them I didn't wreck. Yeah. I just put myself here to make sure she didn't get hit. So, was that the safest thing to do? Maybe not. But it was what I had to do right then to make sure that she was going to be okay.
You know what? Making the decision to procreate with a woman. It's one of those things that, to even now, just thinking about the decision that you have to make, and y'all two were married and had y'all children, but to decide and to make that decision that she was going to be the woman that I wanted to do that with in this point in my life, It still gives me the chills. Like, I still got the chicken skin just thinking about that, and how that's changed me in terms of how I look at life. In retrospect, like, oh yeah, I'm ready to have kids. I'm stable. I can do this. But nah, man, you don't really understand until you are experiencing that child, and you see how they are developing every day, and that kind of thing. I mean, it's changing me now, even talking about that.
Yeah. And I would say that if more people made that as a conscious decision, then we would be in better shape.
Sure. I mean, you should have a license in order to have a kids for some people.
Well,
like you should have to pass the test.
I mean, I'm not saying that you have a license, because just because you have a license to drive don't mean you're a good driver.
Amen.
It just means you can drive.
Right.
But to say I'm going to make this decision, and using your driving analogy, if everybody that's got behind a wheel said, I'm going to do this safely, then all these people who get behind the wheel, drunk and all that kind of stuff, that wouldn't happen. So that kind of conscious, and that's got to be an internal kind of thing.
Okay. So we answered the question. What about you?
Oh yeah, like you all. It's.
I got so many profound things that have changed, but made me feel some kind of way.
But I think when I listen, when I read this story, or when somebody else is reading this story, one of the experiences of just standing and saying and seeing folk that you have to do something was when your mother invited me to come out to Dotson. And I was walking around the building and looking at how those teachers were teaching these black boys in particular who had come out from the housing project as almost as if they were non-entities. And I knew I had to do something to be able to respond and to be supportive and to become an advocate. Because first thing they said, well, we don't get any support from their mamas, and this was always, you send me down a road I wasn't thinking about going down. One of the things that used to always burn me up is they would always say, he's in a single family household and she's got 5 children and she can't control these 5 children. Jesus. And this would be a single white female, in many cases in their early 20s, with a class with 21 kids. They knew how to control those 21 kids, but I was like, oh no. Because you have bust this child 21 miles away from home.
Out of their community.
Out of their community to bring them out here doesn't mean because she can't come out here and volunteer to fold up papers and copy stuff, that doesn't mean that she's not interested in what her child does. And so I knew that somehow I had to become an advocate for those kids in that building. And I knew that while they were not physically sick, many of them were stressed out because they couldn't understand what they had done to deserve these teachers. There were kids, sometimes they would just say, well, we're going out to recess. You can't go out to recess. You only want to go out to recess because you want to go out there with Miss Dixon. And you need to stay in your classroom. And I said, they need to go out to see Miss Dixon because they want to go out and see somebody black who's concerned about them that they can talk to. And so that started my experience.
Yeah.
Of just saying, I got to do something.
Yeah.
And at that particular time when I was first doing that, I had a whole lot of other things I would have much rather be doing.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. And we have touched on this in other shows. But I'll ask you more plainly. Why didn't you ever become more officially associated with kids as being a teacher or an administrator or something like that, as opposed to being on a volunteer basis? Because, you talk about Dotson. You were definitely associated with all the schools that I went to. Why didn't you ever take a more profound stance in that regard? Because, you went to your wife's school, you go to your daughter's school, and you go to some of your friends' schools and help out. But why didn't you ever take the stance to say, I'm going to be an educator, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that officially?
Because, and I'll use this story that we just shared. When you are independent and free, you can say certain things. Yeah. If I'd have been a teacher, I'd have been fired the first week. Because I'd have said, no, hell no, we ain't doing this.
Right.
We ain't doing this.
Okay.
You look at the anxiety that teachers are having now about going back and what they have to do. I'd been saying, no, I ain't going back.
Yeah.
And
so, you said something earlier about teachers going back on Thursday, and they are virtual teachers now. Is that what that is?
Yeah, they're gonna be virtual.
What the hell is that gonna look like? What is that going to look like?
It's going to, in my opinion, and I've had some people of whom have been very critical of me, and I've made this statement, and I will stand by this statement. It will just further the gap between the kids who have and the kids who do not have.
Yeah.
The kids of whom have the parental support, the parental resources will be able to come. Now they're not giving computers to first and second graders.
No.
All of the ones third and above will have computers.
Yeah.
Your sister teaches first grade. She's going to have to be dependent and hope that child who's in that class has. And then add it to that. I mean, I know they know how to text, and I know they know how to do certain things, but how they gonna know how to log in, sign on, get on, do all the stuff that they're supposed to do to be able to follow the teacher, and when they have some trouble with whatever it is, I mean, in the early part, and when you take into consideration that many of them have already missed 4 months.
Yeah.
They were not prepared. They're going to be in a grade that they're not prepared for.
Okay.
It's just going to widen the gap and the anxiety level.
Now, I will say this.
Yeah.
So for me, I think I'm the only one in this circle who has a kid who's within that age group.
Yeah.
So my son being he was 5 at that time, now 6, getting ready going to the first grade, we had to do the virtual school thing. Now, initially you would think that at that age they don't know how, but they can retain and learn a lot more if you just teach it to them. Now, Seth, what is funny is he used my computer for his Zoom meetings for his class. So it got to the point to where when it was time for me to start using Zoom for my meetings, because I had never used it before, I called Seth in to show me how to navigate the program. Now, mind you, Seth is only 6, and he's showing me, and even if I have to get on my Zoom meetings, I have to make sure I'm on my account and not his, because he logs in and have to do his as well. So it's not the most ideal situation, but you might want to have a little bit more hope in what the kids can do.
Okay. Bruh, we went to high school together, and I know where you went to middle school, and I know when you went to early grade school. And how do you think that you would have been able to deal with that? Let's just say that you were Seth's age in 2020. Like, how would that play in your life at that time?
I mean, you adapt and overcome with the situation that you're in.
Yeah.
Right now, looking at us, we went to Whites Creek High School.
Right, correct.
That is not listed as one of the top high schools in the city. It's not listed as one of the best, but we made the best of the situation, and we were able to persevere and overcome later on. So that's just going to be a notch in their perseverance life. So, I think he will be just fine navigating through the program.
Okay. Now, hold on. Let me ask Steve one more question.
All right.
Can you imagine? We became drum majors, right? And then it was like, your season's canceled. Like, no more football, no more marching band, no more drum majors, none of that. I still don't know how I would have been able to deal with not going to the prom.
Yeah, so I think I would have been devastated because
my God.
I joined the band with the intention to become a drum major.
Me too.
So that was a dream, and I'm sure some of these students and administrators, different things had dreams. But again, this is just going to be a notch in the belt for them to have to persevere, and it's going, for you to get to a testimony, you got to go through a test. So I think this is just a test for them right now. It's an unfortunate one, but it's the circumstances that we're in right now.
Got another question for you all, and this is really kind of even though Steve was not here last week, it's kind of a follow-up to last week as we talked about the close relationship.
Friends, how many of us have them? Not on that.
But have there been times in you all's relationship where one asked the other, and you asked Steve or Steve asked you, to do something that you really were not sure, one, whether you could, whether you should or could or why, or any of those things.
Right.
But when the question came, you immediately responded to what they asked you.
Sure.
And so I just like you all to share an experience.
You know what? Steve and I, like I said, have been friends for a long time. Right. And with that, I don't think that there is anything that Steve would call and ask me to do, or Steve would call and ask of me, that I would refuse. And I'll put that in the context because Steve knows me. You know, I'm pretty sure that there are things that he needs done or would like to have done that he knows he better not call me because it's probably not going to get done to his specification because we know each other in that way. But, you know, in that same vein, you know, there's one specific time Steve called me and I'm watching basketball, you know, and I got some people over to the house and, you know, we having a little party and everybody's, you know, jumping and responding to the game. And Steve, and I'm generally, I don't have my phone on me when I'm at the house. Steve calls. It's like, man, I need to come over. I need to holler at you. And so at that moment, it's just like, all right, you know, but I could tell in his voice something was wrong, you know, and I didn't ask him what's the matter. I didn't ask him, you know, can you elaborate why you coming over to my house at 9:30 at night on a Wednesday? No, it was just like, all right, I'm here, come on over. And so thinking back on why he came over to the house, it's just like, he didn't put me in a vulnerable situation for me to be to respond to him. He just needed to be in a safe place for himself. He needed to be somewhere where he was not where he was, let's put it that way. And so I think to answer that question, you know, Steve could call me tomorrow and say, man, I need you to do this, and I would be there for him.
Yeah. I think for me, you know, taking a different spin on the story. So when Trey decided he was going to start the Cocktail 615, and if you haven't heard it, check it out. Mm-hmm. Great podcast. He called me and he asked me would I mind sitting and doing an interview with him over the segment on Black Fathers. Now, me and him have conversations, and, you know, I'm fine with getting on social media and putting a post out there, but, you know, I wasn't big on you all hearing my voice, me having to talk and navigate through it. I'm like, man, I don't know what I'm going to sound like. My nerves bad or whatnot with it, but because it was him and I'm his friend, and I feel like if I'm not going to support him, how can I expect others to support him? Then I had to do it. Man, so it required me to step outside of my comfort zone. Yeah. And, you know, I'm starting to feel like I'm in my element now.
Right. So, I mean, with the whole Black Fathers thing, you know, that was part of my decision process, right? So when we recorded, you know, I had already conceived a child. And so I wanted to talk to people that have been in my position, that I respected, that I, you know, talk to me, you know, on this show. So, you know, I can create some content, one, but then I can be well informed by people that I trust. You know, Apostle's on there too, on the Black Fathers, you know, to give his nuggets of wisdom that I take. But, man, yeah, I appreciate you for doing that too, man. I know you're not the... let me sit down and tell y'all about my story and all of that kind of stuff. That's just not your way, but I appreciate you for that.
Ain't no problem. Anytime.
Well, as a follow-up to that...
Hold on. Let me ask you, what would be something that you could drop on us in terms of that question?
Well, I mean, everybody, well, not everybody, but majority of people know him. I mean, my being in ministry was, you know, the then Bishop Carter called me, and a pastor had walked away from a church, and they needed to send a pastor over to the church, And so he called me and he asked me would I consider going over to this church. And I said, well, there's one problem, Bishop. And he says, what's that? I said, I'm not clergy. He says, well, everybody calls you Reverend Sonny. I said, well, some other places they call me some other things, you know. People see me in that capacity because of my relationship, but, officially I'm, not a part of that. And so he asked me to, to do it.
Yeah.
Well, part of it was I had a great deal of respect for him.
Right.
And even though that may have been something that I had wrestled with.
Sure.
Because he asked me.
Yeah. It's no question. Like, I mean, if that's your partner.
Right, and I mean, if he sees this.
Sure. Or hears it.
Right. Or he,
Yeah.
and says, I need for you to do this.
Right.
For me, then part of it becomes, out of the whole relationship.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I know if I call and ask Steve, as long as it doesn't jeopardize his livelihood, his family, his belief in God, or, test his morality, he gonna do it. It's not even a question. And I have the same understanding of who he is. I'm not going to ask Steve to do something outside of his wheelhouse that I know he's not going to be comfortable doing. It's just my take on who he is.
And just thinking what has come out of those situations. So he asked you to do something you weren't clergy, and now you're one of the most known pastors around the city right now. Trey wanted to start a show. He asked me to be a part of it, and now we're hoping to get the syndication and everything. He's all over with it. And in my situation, him allowing me to do that allowed me to get through a difficult time in my life to be able to keep pressing on, and we're thriving because of it. So
absolutely,
sometimes you have to take those actions to then move forward into a more positive light.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what this story is about. That we just shared, is that we, as I said, we focus on the miracle, but we don't focus enough on the relationship that Jesus said to them, you feed them. And I mean, and so the story says, go get them. And oftentimes we think the them are the people, but it is the them is really the loaves and the fish. And he blesses those and then gives it to the disciples. He empowers the disciples. He said, you feed them, and then out of the relationship, he empowers them to go and to do what he's asked them to do. They trusted him enough to bring him, and they probably in the back of their mind saying, we got all these people out here. There's no way that this is going to happen. But they trusted him enough. And they trusted him enough, and as I heard in the conversation that you all just said, is that you all trusted one another enough not to ask you to do something that you knew the other couldn't do. He asked them and then gave them the power. Now, for all practical purposes, as I look at the story and as I interpret the story, many of the 5,000, and probably if you multiply, the numbers, to 2.5 kids and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it could have been 1,000. Most of them did not see Jesus breaking the bread, blessing the bread. All they know is somebody came by with some food. I think of you all doing y'all's thing at the at homecoming and how you feed the multitude. Nobody that comes by knows anything about the work that went into it and how it got there. All they know is they got something to eat.
I'm just putting it into that perspective because I never thought about it like that. I'm just thinking of going out to Nissan Stadium.
Sure.
You got all the people out there, and there's one grill.
One grill
going, and you may be on one side of the stadium and somebody's on another. Now you want something to eat, you hungry, and it's got to come from that one grill.
Yeah.
And somebody's bringing food, and no matter what, you eat until you get full.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's still leftovers, but it was one grill.
Yeah.
Just think about that perspective, right? Because I never thought about that. You said that they never actually may not have seen Jesus do it.
Right.
They were just
you're talking about 5,000
beneficiaries of it.
Yeah.
They're the beneficiaries of it, and they probably saw the person who gave it to them. And I've been in that situation, Trey knows, along with a group called the Untouchables. We used to have our little 4th of July. I really missed that this year. And I remember one time we were playing basketball on a Sunday, and I think it may have been on Tuesday that was coming up. And a guy came up to me and said, "Man, I want to invite you to the Untouchables are having something. You need to come on out." And I was like, hell, I am an untouchable. You ain't knowing what the hell you doing inviting me to my function, And so, I think about that in the context that all they saw were the disciples. He allows the disciples. And in the context of where you all shared in your experiences, nobody may have not known the support system that was behind you that enabled you to make that decision. All they know is that decision was made. I would venture to say that as Trey had the podcast on the fathers, he didn't invite any. I will venture to say.
No, you can ask me.
No. I was going to say, you didn't invite any fathers in that you had not seen being a father.
Correct. That would be correct.
That there was something in them.
Sure.
There was something in the relationship. One, as you talk about seeing, it was something in that relationship that said, I want to hear from him. I'm willing to take his advice. I'm willing to trust his advice. And I'm sure that took place in the thing. And Jesus said to them in that moment, they got to feel good because they know what he's going through. And I some people say, well, they didn't want to be bothered with the folk. I'll read into it a more sympathetic approach. Jesus, look, man, you've been working all day. And I know you haven't gotten over, this what's going on. I came to service the Sunday after Gail died. And everybody said, no, you don't need to be here. You need to, no. I need to be with the people. I had that need to be in the context of community. And I see in this story that even though Jesus was at this point, Jesus wanted them to know, one, he trusted them. And that he wants us to know that if we trust him, that when he asks us to do those things that are deep down inside, when we get that gut feeling, and we know that that's Jesus, that invitation to respond, even when it means risking our lives to stand on the side of the road to protect somebody, even when we're doing that when Jesus calls us, then Jesus will give us the resources we need. Well, I think we have covered the basis on this, and I want to thank General West for being with us tonight, and Certainly, the conversation with you two have helped me to kind of focus on where I might be going with it tomorrow. But Steve, thank you for being and joining us tonight.
Anytime. It's always great to be in company of gentlemen, those that I look up to and admire. It's always good to be a part of that, and this was enlightening for me, to a story I've heard so many times, to then take a different spin on it and go a little deeper into it. So I appreciate the invite.
You have a open invitation, and as always, I am thankful for the relationship and that you and Trey have, and being able to witness that, and to know that we are brothers in many ways. We are brothers in many ways. So I give thanks for that. And as I say, I thank you for listening today, and hope that there was a word that might give you some comfort or challenge you. As always, would like to see you on Sunday, but know that for many of us, it's still a challenge for us to get out, and that's why we're doing this. So we do encourage you to stay safe, practice your distancing, and make sure that you wash your hands, and continue to pray for one another.
Wash your hands.
Yeah, wash your hands. Wash your hands. I never thought that we would get to the place where we would have to tell people to wash your hands. But be careful, and remember those prayers. And we thank you for tuning in.